You're watching Pop Culture Paradox. Theories nobody asked for. On this episode, we interview underground filmmaker and artist Larry Wessel. My guest today is has done everything. He's been a videographer, filmmaker, artist, collage artist. His collages have and other artworks have graced everything from Hustler magazine to high-end art magazines. And I've got some of his videos, and right here, this is his latest, Larry Wessel's Palace of Wonders. And then we do have some other videos, Sugar and Spice. This one, which I hope to talk about later, Ultramegalopolis. And then, of course, the classic really is a Tarabalium about bullfighting. And most recently, he's publicizing, he has a book coming out that he's working on. And here's the cover, King of the Underground, Another Moments of Clarity. And I figure that's probably a best place to start because, you know, the book's about, well, you. I mean, from beginning to end. So to talk about the book is to talk about you and talk about your movies. Tell me a little bit more about the book that'll be coming out.
Well, it's a memoir, and there are no rules attached to memoir writing. You just tell true stories about your life. And in this case, I'm focusing on what I call moments of clarity. And these are moments throughout my life that I remember, you know, like with great clarity and moments that taught me a lesson of some sort. So I thought that would be a really fun road to go down, memory lane. And I've written a lot of stories in the past and decided that now's the time. After finishing my last documentary, I thought I always have to start in on something right away. And so I thought, well, I'll put my book together. And it's something I can do at home, and I don't have to risk getting the COVID virus, you know, mingling with other people. And I'm very comfortable being at home in my studio. And writing is very reclusive activity, and so it fits like a glove. So yeah, I'm putting these stories together, and very recently I've been going through my photo archive because I want the memoir to be profusely illustrated, and so I'm going through family photos and photographs that I've taken as well throughout the past. And I want to pepper the whole thing with photographs. And, you know, one of the things that I find annoying sometimes with the way photographs are displayed in books is that they just stick them in the middle somewhere, in like a thin little section in the middle, and then you kind of skim through the tiny little thumbnail photos. And I don't want it to be like that. I want to, if it's a good photograph, then I think it should have the display of a good photograph, a full page display. So that's my idea so far. It's a work in progress, so we'll see how it goes. But right now I'm having a lot of fun just going through the archives, digging up old photographs.
Well, I'm sure they've been a lot. I mean, you're still Manhattan Beach, correct?
Yeah, that's where my home is.
Right. So what is how long have you been in Southern California? I guess, I mean, you've been there for your entire life. Is that correct?
Pretty much. I mean, there was one moment when in fact, I write about it in the memoir. When I was 20 years old, I fell in love with a waitress, a local waitress at a late night diner, and it was like a whirlwind romance that got me to jump into her Volkswagen Bug and head off to Colorado. So I spent about a half a year in Colorado, in Inglewood, Colorado. And that's the only time that I haven't lived in Southern California. I've lived in different neighborhoods in Southern California, Hollywood and Echo Park and even Hermosa Beach for a brief time. But the only time I ever really lived outside the state was that one time when I was 20 years old, and I moved off to Inglewood, Colorado.
Oh. Well, how did you adapt? I mean, did you come away like thinking I'm just never going to leave California again, or or do you actually have an appreciation for Colorado?
Well, the appreciation I had, bear in mind I was 20 years old, was that it seemed to me at that time, and this must have been around 1977, Colorado seemed to be about 10 years behind Southern California and Los Angeles. So I could go to a used record shop, for instance, and find all these treasures that were just like practically at bargain basement prices. I mean, very collectible records. And so that really got me excited. And I ended up hoarding a huge bunch of records from the local record shops and then mailing them back home. And so culturally, it just seemed to be about 10 years behind Los Angeles. So I found that to be an advantage. I was almost, I felt like I was almost visiting from the future.
What were some of your first creative steps like? I mean, what came first, like movie making or art or painting?
Actually, the very first thing was still photography. And it was, oddly enough, I mean, I was really kind of a dark kid. Like, I was really into horror and horror movies. And I remember like having conversations in kindergarten on the playground about Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman. And I was growing up in the culture of the early 60s, which was a monster culture. And there were monster movies on TV all the time, especially on Saturday afternoons. I would make sure that I was at home so that I could watch Chiller, which was a presentation of old horror movies, and it was, and this is way before, videotape or any of that stuff. The only way you could see stuff was on TV. Right. So you had to mark your TV guides every week and make sure that you were able to watch all the things you wanted to watch. But even though my obsession was film, photography, I had a cheap camera and it was easy to take photographs. And I got a friend of mine, a neighborhood friend of mine, who's the same age as me. And this was when I was about 10, 11 years old. And I would take pictures of him like he was dead, like laying on the ground, like we put makeup, like a pale makeup on his face to make him look like he was dead, and a little ketchup trickling off of the corner of his mouth, like he had died violently somehow. And that was the beginning of my creativity, I think. I mean, outside of, drawing cartoons and I remember in kindergarten, there was a great emphasis on painting, and every kid had an easel and we were always painting, so my mother taught me to draw when I was even before kindergarten. So I was pretty creative, and also like with literature, like my dad and mom, would read to me poetry and sit me on their laps and tell me stories. And so I was into literature before I even went to kindergarten, and the same with classical music and jazz music. There was always great music to listen to at home, and my parents turned me on to all kinds of magnificent musicians and singers and poets and writers and movies and that's how I really, they would take me to the movies every weekend. And so I tell people that, I was never baptized into any religion other than cinema. And the movie theater was my church. And the cinema was really my Bible. It was like how I learned to make films was like watching the films of Alfred Hitchcock on television and seeing movies like Fantasia at the movies. My folks would even go so far as to drive all the way up to Hollywood for the premiere of like what we saw. We saw a screening of Fantasia up in Hollywood, and the same with Ray Harryhausen and Jason and the Argonauts. I saw that at the movies when I was a kid, and these films were fantastic and mind-blowing, and they really affected my creativity, I believe, and so I was kind of subjected to a lot of culture when I was a child, and this included art museum exhibits as well, so I was very, very well-rounded culturally before I even entered school. And the first films I made were also really gruesome. Like the very first film I made was called The Black Glove. Now, where I got this idea, I hadn't seen any of the Dario Argento movies, where the bad guy's always wearing black leather gloves. But it involved a mysterious killer who wore a black glove and wielded a huge knife, and he sneaks up behind this old man in a rocking chair. It was played by my friend wearing an old rubber old man mask, and he's just about to stab him, and the old man wakes up in fear and runs out of the house, and so the killer runs after him, and that was kind of like it was all that we could fit on a 8mm spool of film.
Oh yeah,
and we got the 8mm camera from my friend's father's closet. We just grabbed it and asked him if we could use it, and there was one roll of unused 8mm film, and we used that. Well, after I saw the magic of that projected, I saved my paper route money, and I bought a little Kodak Super 8 movie camera, and that was just the beginning. The very first film I made with that was a kind of an inventory of my Mad Magazine collection. And I just I shot a couple frames of each Mad Magazine. I had a huge Mad Magazine collection too. And that's part of how I learned to read. My dad would read Mad Magazine to me when I was a toddler, and sitting on his knee, and he'd read. And I think a lot of this darkness does come from my father, because he would read to me Edgar Allan Poe and Robert Service and all Shelley, all these really kind of gothic, scary poets and authors, and that fired my imagination. And that's what as a kid, that's what I was really into. Not so much today. As a 64-year-old adult, I've gotten all of that darkness out of my system, I think. Right. I don't really enjoy horror movies anymore, but I sure did when I was a kid. That was a big thing, Oh, and reading Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, Forey Ackerman's magazine.
Well, he showed up in one of your movies.
He did. I was lucky enough to befriend him, excuse me, and visit his Acker mansion. He called it his Acker mansion in Carla, Florida.
That was this one, right? Ultramegalopolis?
Oh no, it's one you don't have. It's called Sex, Death, and the Hollywood Mystique.
Oh, I do have it, but I don't have the cover. I don't think it survived the fire, if you know what I mean. And all the movies.
Dear.
So I have
Okay,
the video. No, not a literal fire. I just mean from moving and all. But I think I have the video.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure that I still have the artwork for the cover. But yeah, that's where I saw it then.
Yeah.
In the Hollywood or Sex, Death, and the Hollywood Mystique.
Sex, Death, and the Hollywood Mystique features Forey Ackerman and Curtis Harrington and a true crime writer named John Gilmore. And their stories all converge and overlap like during the course of the film. But yeah, I got to hang out with one of my childhood heroes, Forey Ackerman. I visited him quite a lot and hung out with him and went to lunch with him and really had a good time. And I was always hoping that, I mean, he had an enormous museum-worthy archive of cinema treasures that surrounded him in his Acker mansion. And it's sad to say all of that stuff has been scattered to the four winds. I mean, he had been hoping that somebody like one of his old pals from the past, like John Landis, or perhaps Steven Spielberg, would come to his rescue and keep all of the collection intact in the form of a museum. He wanted it to be in Hollywood, and he wanted it to be focused on science fiction and horror, and that never came to pass, unfortunately.
That's amazing. So you mean his material hasn't made it into, like, say, any of the Hollywood museums or anything at this moment?
I don't really know. I know that the lion's share of it went up on eBay almost immediately after he died. Yeah, and so anybody who had more than a few bucks could scoop up the best of it. And I have no idea where that stuff is now. I mean, he had amazing treasures,
What was the first WrestleMania movie?
Well, my first release, I mean, I made a lot of movies before I founded WrestleMania, but the first official WrestleMania release was my documentary about bullfighting, Taurobolium. And yeah, that was a result of spending 4 years attending every single bullfight in Tijuana for 4 seasons, both at the downtown bull ring, which no longer exists, and the bull ring by the sea. The bull ring by the sea is still there. The downtown bull ring was shut down several years ago, unfortunately. It was a place that had been there since the turn of the century, and there was a lot of history there, and it was really, really sad when I found out that it was taken down. But you get to see it in Taurobolium. I was able to kind of rescue its memory that way, and I think the documentary still holds up. It's still a powerful experience watching it. So that was my first official WrestleMania release. But I had been making films since I was 11 years old, and so what would that be? It's 1968, and you figure Taurobolium came out. What year does it say on the back of that VHS copy that you have there? What year is on the back of the cover of your?
Oh, the year of Taurobolium.
Yeah, what does it say?
It says this one is copyright 1994.
Yeah, 94 is when it's released. So you figure from 68 to 94, I had been making films for about 26 years prior to that. And at that time, I was really infatuated with documentary form and nonfiction. And I was watching a lot of films by Frederick Wiseman throughout my teenage years, and became completely obsessed with cinema verite. And I thought I wanted to make the ultimate cinema verite movie in a bull ring. And that's what I did. Wiseman never made a film about bullfighting, so I thought, wow, great, I'm going to do it. And so I did. And like I say, every every bullfight for 4 years, I was there in the front row or in what they call a palco, which is it's like a cement bunker that's right on the level of the bull and the matador. And so I got amazing footage and really up close footage. And then when the bullfight is over, I take you into the bull ring slaughterhouse too, so you can see what happens to the bull. There's nothing wasted. All of the meat gets sent to local meat markets and even charity meat markets, and nothing's wasted. It's all in the interest of eating meat in the end. But up to that point, it's all about art and artistry, and there's nothing like it. I mean, I remember the very first bullfight I attended, I felt this sense of going back in time. It was really odd, but I really felt a connection with the deep, prehistory of bullfighting. Just attending that very first bullfight and hearing the music and seeing the pageantry, and there's nothing like it. In fact, I've often fantasized about one day retiring in Mexico, and it would have to be by a bull ring. So if I wasn't attending the bullfight, I could hear the beautiful music, the pasodobles, and that.
I'm thinking about the video of Herb Alpert, the Tijuana Brass, the Lonely Bull. Now, what arena was that? Was that any of the arenas that you were videotaping, or was that a Mexico City arena?
No, that was in Tijuana. He Herb Alpert got his inspiration to do his music with the Tijuana Brass from attending bullfights in Tijuana. That music is just so infectious that's where Herb Alpert got his inspiration. And when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, I picked up a trumpet and played trumpet, and I got to be pretty good. I was like a first chair trumpet player in the school orchestra and the school band, and my hero was Herb Alpert, and I love that music. I grew up listening. To me, the sound of the 60s is Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I just adored Herb Alpert, and I wanted to be Herb Alpert when I was 10 years old. And as it turns out, many years later, when I met Anton Lavey, he told me the same thing, that his parents took him to a bullfight in Tijuana at the old downtown bull ring where I shot my documentary. And the very first time he heard that music, he became so infatuated with it that he learned to play all those pasodobles, all those bullfight songs Lavey played when he was a kid, and ended up working for the Clyde Beatty Circus and playing calliope and playing an organ for the Clyde Beatty Circus, and for the big cat acts, he would play he would play the traditional circus songs certainly, but he loved to play the bullfight pasodobles for the big cat acts in the circus. So that really
nice quote there. He had a lot of good things to say about the Terabolium.
Oh yeah. Well, what's funny?
if you had your camera at the Roman Colosseum,
Oh yeah, at the Circus Maximus. Yeah, he goes. Yeah. Well, you could read it from the back of the box. Well, read what Lavey said about Terabolium.
Let's see. Oh, okay, there it is. That's what I was looking for. Too bad Larry Wessel wasn't around with his camera in Rome filming the Circus Maximus. How did you wind up meeting Anton Lavey?
Well, that's an interesting story, and it's a really long. Well, it's in my memoir, but I'll give you a Reader's Digest condensed version. In 1992, during the LA riots, I was going around with my video camera filming all of the riot damage. And my friend Adam Parfrey, the late publisher of Feral House, and before that, Amok Books, he was a good friend of mine. And one day, one morning, it was after filming riot footage and stuff, I went over to visit him, and he was having breakfast. And he told me that he was working on a documentary with Nick Bougas about Anton Lavey, and it was going to be called Speak of the Devil. And he was interviewing people for the documentary, and he knew that the Satanic Bible had a big impact on me when I was a teenager, and that I had purchased it at a book fair in high school, and that I read it cover to cover right away, and it became kind of like my self-help book when I was a teenager, a shy teenager. And so Adam already knew this about me, and he said, Larry, I want you to tell that story in my documentary. And I said, well, certainly, I'd love to, And so I said, I'll go home and dress up in a black suit and a black tie, black shirt, and all of this. And he said, no, I want you to just stand in the front yard right now, and I'm going to videotape you. And so I was kind of on the spot, but I of course I agreed. And so I'm wearing a red wife beater T-shirt and shorts and tennis shoes. And I'm standing on Adam's lawn in LA, and talking about how the Satanic Bible influenced me as a kid, and I went on and on and on and on about it, and I thought it would be cut, and I might have a few seconds in the documentary, whatever. But Nick Bougas was so impressed with what I had to say that he left the whole thing in. So you can see me in Speak of the Devil, a documentary about Anton Lavey, pontificating about the Satanic Bible. Well, so that was that. That was this one morning in Los Angeles in '92. And then what happened after that was really peculiar. I was invited to a record release party for a band called Ethel Meatplow. Now, I was friends with the members of this band, and they got a contract from Warner Brothers. So they threw this huge party, Warner Brothers did, and it was like free-flowing alcohol. It was just unbelievable. And there were a lot of people showed up to this thing. And the bar was like about 5 or 6 people deep, and it was hard to even belly up to the bar to get a drink. But I was there waiting, my turn to get a drink, and this gorgeous young woman was staring at me from the other end of the bar and caught my eye, and we made eye contact, and she just slowly, it was almost like a movie, she just kind of very slowly drifted toward me, and she said, I saw you in the Satan documentary. And I said, what Satan documentary? Nobody had even told me that this film had been completed. And so she told me that it premiered up in San Francisco, and that Anton Lavey was so impressed with my section of the documentary that he wanted to meet me. And Becky said, I can introduce you to Anton Lavey. How would you like that? And I said, I would love that. She said, well, when's the next time you're going to be in San Francisco? I said, well, and I knew I had some vacation time coming up at work. So I said, I don't know, in a couple of weeks. She goes, it's done. She goes, come up and you can stay with me in my apartment, and I will introduce you to Anton Lavey, because he said he really, really wants to meet you. And she says, by the way, one of the last things she told me, she goes, by the way, I sleep in a coffin. So I thought that was really funny, and both funny and kind of intriguing, a little creepy, But I said, okay, I'll stay with you. And so, boy, oh boy, I was real excited, and I was a little disappointed that my friends didn't tell me, the film was out or anything. And so eventually I contacted Bugas, and he sent me a nice VHS copy. It was on VHS at the time. He sent me a VHS copy of it, and a bunch of covers, and things, ephemera. And so I went up to San Francisco to meet Anton Lavey. And boy, oh boy, that was a life-changing experience. And we became very fast friends. And one of the things I was worried about is because I had, read up on, I had done a lot of reading about Lavey, and I read his book and everything else. And I knew that he was a real serious animal lover. And I thought, oh no, what's going to happen? I'm working on this documentary about bullfighting, and I want to tell him about it, but I'm worried that he might take offense, And the exact opposite was true. He said that Larry, I'm a very serious aficionado of bullfighting. He said, and then he told me the story about how he learned to play the Paso Dobles by visiting Tijuana's bull ring when he was a child. And he told me about his favorite matador. And he told me all these great bullfight stories. And I was just enthralled and so happy that he was into bullfighting. It was great. And then that night, any visit with Anton Lavey extends into the wee hours of the morning. And, you don't get out of there until the sun comes up. And so during those wee hours, he invited me into his kitchen where he had his keyboard set up. And he played for me all of this wonderful, wonderful medley of bullfight Paso Dobles. And it just brought tears to my eyes. It was incredible. And no sheet music or anything. It was all from memory, And a lifelong love of bullfighting.
Well, somebody who appears, we got a mutual friend in Palace of Wonders who was telling me about his visit to Anton Lavey. And apparently, he played like a really mean "God Bless America" on his organ.
Oh, I believe it. Probably with full of bombast and guns and because his keyboard.
I'm just imagining the head of the Church of Satan playing "God Bless America" and singing it robustly.
Oh yeah. Well, certainly, yeah. March music was he was very into Sousa and all the great March songs, and "God Bless America." Of course, yeah. I could. I've never heard him play it, but I'm certain that he did an amazing rendition of it, because he loved music like that was full of what he called bombast.
And you're in Ultramegalopolis. This is the one where you videotape at the McMartin preschool, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that whole witch hunt was going on in my hometown, so it was kind of embarrassing, that Manhattan Beach became the center of satanic panic, but it was. And it was a witch hunt, and those preschool teachers all got completely financially ruined by their attorneys. The people that made money, profited from that were the attorneys, and they were all bankrupt at the end of that. It was it was the longest criminal trial in the history of America. I think it went on for over 11 years, and at the end of it, all the preschool teachers were defamed and slandered and penniless. And it was just horrible. And that was the mecca for that was Manhattan Beach, and it caused what's known. We know now about things like panic and how people can spread that kind of misinformation across the globe rapidly through organizations that were all set in place for that. It was just awful. And yeah, anyway, yeah, that's part of Ultramegalopolis.
Right. Well, The reason I mentioned it is when I moved to California around that time, around the time that the McMartin trial was coming to an end. And I remember going to that preschool and walking around when I heard that they were digging up tunnels. And so I was like looking to find the tunnels.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about tunnels that are supposed to go all the way from Manhattan Beach to Hollywood, right? I mean, really, really huge tunnels. And I'm like seeing these little gullies in there. And there's a lot of video that you shot also as they were digging up around the school at the time.
Yeah. Well, I was fascinated with it because it was happening right in my backyard, you know. And so I collected all of the local newspaper articles from the very first newspaper article. Was astounding. The sensational nature of the news reporting was also outrageous. And it got to be so bad that all of these people, I mean, people think of Oprah Winfrey as this like new age, you know, sweet guru of all things, you know, nice. She was like one of the biggest muckrakers during the McMartin preschool days. She was on TV talking about, you know, satanic cults molesting children and stuff. Like at the very beginning, it was Oprah and Geraldo Rivera, you name them. All of those so-called journalists were just causing those kind of rumors to spread like wildfire across the country. And pretty soon, everybody in the country says that they were victims of satanic child abuse. And it was mass hypnosis. It was all bullshit. And what we now call satanic panic. And that was just such a weird time to live through and witness, you know.
Wow. So your Palace of Wonders, the latest movie. I think you're actually working on this when I knew you back in the 90s, but or portions of it anyway.
Well, actually, the first footage I shot was pretty close to the 90s. It was in the year 2000.
Right. More like the year 2000.
And I think that's right around the time that I met you, too. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about this since you wanted to do the podcast. Do you remember the circumstances under which you met me?
Well, it was we went to what was that, Blue Studio?
Yeah,
Blue Studio, and the woman who ran Blue Studio was having a film festival, and Donald Jackson of Hell Comes to Frogtown was there, and so I think that's where we first met, because I think that's where I got your card, and I also met Donald Jackson too, and I got stories about Donald Jackson as well. I mean, we used to drive up and down Hollywood with one of the girls that was in one of the women that was in my movie, Catholic School Catfight. I would go to graveyards and video and all that, and it was like once upon a time in Hollywood. But anyway, that's where we met.
Yeah, well, she used to have these Blue Studio screenings outside of the Blue Studio. I think it must have been at one of the early venues where she would have these screenings. And the concept was that anybody could be represented in one of her screenings if you submitted a VHS tape that was 5 minutes or less. That was the only rule.
That's right.
5 minutes, and it would be guaranteed a screening. And the screenings, she would always provide free pizza. And all the screenings, it was all you can eat pizza. So it was a pretty neat thing. And that's where I met you at one of those. And then there were weekly or bi-weekly screenings, I think it was. And I always submitted a 5 minute, I cut together a little 5 minute something or other and would show them. And my films became really popular at these screenings with Gloria and her husband, Don. Now, Don was this mysterious man. He was an art collector, and he collected Warhol on paper. Like he originally, as a teenager, he actually was able to obtain 5 Andy Warhol paintings, original paintings. And then when they skyrocketed in price, he like made tens of millions of dollars just on these 5 paintings, like over $10 million.
Wow.
And gave some of that, fed some of that into his father's company. When his father ran a business that called California Tan, which is a most popular, supposedly at the time, the most popular tanning lotion in Brazil. I remember, but it was like it was a big money maker, and they were one of the first people to experiment using hemp oil, and he had a big hemp plantation somewhere in Hawaii where they were making the hemp oil for their beauty products. And anyway, he was a multi-millionaire, and was really like Andy Warhol's biggest fan. And he had there was an office building on Wilshire Boulevard where one floor of the building, I think it was the 7th floor, if I recall correctly, was his. And every inch of wall space on that entire floor was covered with Warhol prints. And when I found out about this, I told Gloria, I said, I want to make a documentary about collectors, and I want to start with your husband's Warhol collection. And so she told him, and he said, yeah, anytime Larry wants to come over, he can inventory my entire collection. In fact, he'd be doing me a favor because I don't have such a video record of my collection. So I filmed his entire collection of Warhols, and that was the very, very beginning. And it was my first digital, first time using digital equipment too. And so from there, I thought I would be making a film about collectors. And over the years, Iconoclast came out, Love came out, mm-hmm. Eric and Shay came out. All of those documentaries I made placed my collector documentary on the back burner. So I had all this collection of footage that I would collect over the years, even while I was making other documentaries. I had over like 20 years worth of footage. And I thought, well, enough is enough. I've got to put this stuff together. And that's where you get Larry Wessel's Palace of Wonders.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. and it became more than just a documentary about collectors. It became a documentary about artists and writers and historians and collectors, all together, all intertwined together and overlaid together so that it makes sense. That it's almost as if I found these collectors and their amazing collections, and I put them in my own museum called Larry Wessel's Palace of Wonders. Right. And when you see this DVD, you get the experience of seeing all this marvelous stuff and all of this art being created as well. And it becomes a really positive, creative experience, I hope, for the viewer. That's what I was trying to do. I didn't want to have anything, horror related or negative or true crime related, because there's too much of that shit nowadays. Yeah. Anyway, it's disgusting to me. And mm-hmm. So I wanted to create an antidote to that, something really pleasant and life affirming and gratifying for people, so that they have a wonderful, positive experience watching Larry Wessel's Palace of Wonders. There's nothing in it that will give you nightmares. It's all positive, and if anything, it will spark creativity in your own mind and your own work, and inspire you. things like
I love how we go from like the Black House of Anton Lavey, and also Leonard Knight, who paints gospel messages on the side of mountains, is also in the movie as well.
Well,
And
yeah. Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, Leonard Knight is one of the most pure artists I've ever met, and to see what he created his own living environment in the middle of the desert and built a holy mountain to boot in the middle of the desert, and he had people making pilgrimages to his holy mountain from all around the world, and became a mass media sensation. And it was all with this desire of telling the world about, his conversion to Christianity, his the sinner's prayer, that was his big message. And he wanted to spread the gospel of love. He wanted everybody to love each other, and it was coming from a position of being the guy to inspire you to think about love. And when you came away from a visit with him, that's all you would think about is this message of love, and so I thought that was really inspiring. And I wanted to send a similar message with Palace of Wonders. I wanted to spread the word of love, and there's too much hatred in the world and too much negativity. And Leonard was great. He was a folk singer as well. He wrote his own folk songs, and I have him singing in the documentary about his flower trees, and discussing his creative process. And you actually, he tells you how he makes everything. And he's like one of the great folk artists that we have in America. Sadly, he passed away fairly recently, and is no longer with us. But I was lucky to have had the opportunity to visit him on 3 or 4 occasions and collect video footage along the way.
Well, just to kind of wrap up, how are you adapting? I just want to know kind of your thoughts on our streaming world now, working with Facebook, YouTube, because I know that you, like me, and actually anybody of any political stripe these days, at one point somebody has wound up in Facebook jail at one point in their life, I think. And how are you adapting to just everything new? Because back then it was videos, you had to put them in envelopes and send them out. Are you still doing that, or do you see yourself getting more into streaming at some point?
Well, I haven't started, selling streaming content yet. I'm a consumer of streaming content. Almost nightly, I'm streaming something. It's usually a documentary. And it's, through Amazon Prime mainly. I subscribe to anything that comes out, like the new, there's an incredible new Peter Jackson documentary about the Beatles called Get Back. And in order to watch that, you had to subscribe to Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. So for $1.99, I subscribed to Disney Plus, for a month. And then I immediately canceled it. But it allowed me to see this 8-hour documentary about the Beatles, which is one of the most terrific things I've ever seen. You actually get to see the Beatles creating music, like from scratch, coming up with lyrics to 2 albums, Let It Be and Abbey Road. You see them in the studio, and their working methods and everything. It's just extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. And that was something that I streamed. But right now I have a DVD shop set up, called WesselMania.BigCartel.com, and I sell my DVDs there. The memoir is going to be released through Amazon. I'm self-publishing on Amazon. So I no longer have to worry about going to the post office anymore. I just think that's the most beautiful thing, is that you can self-publish. Amazon gives you 50% of every sale. You're not going to get that from any book publisher, and you get Amazon, the behemoth, seller of all things, selling your merchandise, and you make a hefty profit. And I just can't imagine anything better than that for a book, So, and it's going to be a paper book. I'm not a big fan of ebooks or anything like that, so I don't see it being an ebook. It could be an ebook as well. I don't know yet. I won't discuss that now. But for now, I have it in my mind that I want it to be a paperback, and as somebody can hold and smell and paint.
Right.
It's just more of a tactile sensation you get reading a book than you do anything online, But I don't know. In the future, I might start streaming my old inventory of films one at a time, I guess. I don't know yet. I just love, it's the same tactile thing with DVDs, I like the feel of a DVD, and I like to open it up, and it's like with where is it? My Palace of Wonders DVD. There it is. You can let's see. Let me open it up for you here. What I think is real cool about DVDs is that you can not only have a nice artful display on the cover. If I can get this thing open for you. Sorry, too slow, I'm sure. Get the shrink wrap off of it. The shrink wrap is an added element, too, that makes it nice, because it's nice and pristine when it arrives in the mail. But you can open it up, and inside you can print on the disc, you see, and with Palace of Wonders, I thought it'd be really fun to have a disc that which is kind of like a piece of the cover artwork, but it shows that I have depending upon your temperament, either a third eye or a hole through my head, right in the middle, which I thought was a great design, for the disc, and so you don't get that with a something that you download from the internet. But you can hold it in your hand. It's just a nice item, and it tells you all of the players on the back and everything. But I just like I still like DVDs, and I even like vinyl LPs too. I recently got a new turntable, and I love playing the old records. And I never threw away any of my records from when I was a kid. I still have them. And
I had a past guest tell me that there's actually VHS conventions now.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I know that VHS. There's a whole lot of collectors out there that love their VHS tapes, and God bless them. I don't. I still have all of my old VHS tapes. But I do prefer to watch them in a sharper resolution, which you do get with DVD, and nowadays, Blu-ray, I suppose. But I don't even have a high definition television at home. I still, in the living room, we still have a huge Sony television in there, and we get everything Wi-Fi'd to it. And so I watch all these things in the living room with my mother, and so it's a lot of fun to do that right now. And that TV is still good, and it one day it will, when it does not function anymore, I'll replace it with a nice HD monitor, a real big one, But right now it's a 40-inch TV. It's pretty big, and it's big enough to enjoy a movie on. And so, if it ain't broke, why fix it or why replace it? I always say so. Anyway, yes,
you go through the lockdown, and I mean, you can't go to theaters anymore. You know, you got this nice big TV.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to the point. I mean, even before the COVID raised its ugly head, I've always been a homebody anyway. So I always loved being at home and working on things at home and entertaining myself at home as well. Although I did occasionally like to go out to the movies. I haven't been out to the movies in, I don't know, maybe 5 years, something like that. And I don't miss it at all. I mean, I think about it, but not with the, you know, I really want this COVID thing to just be done and over with, you know, so I don't have to even, you know, think about it. Mm-hmm. But it's just such an awful prospect. And, you know, I don't mind being isolated. It's fine for me, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange going to a theater these days. And I know we could talk forever on this, but it's like, it's really strange even going to a theater these days. I have yet now to be in a theater where it's not like a night at the opera where you have to select a seat before going into the theater. And then if you decide to move, maybe you're next to some rowdy people in the theater or whatever, you actually have to do another cash transaction to get another seat on the other end of the theater. And like, you know, the golden age of the 70s when we went to theaters, oh, this person, I don't want to sit here anymore. You just move to another seat. Now it's like a whole new financial transaction just to move your seat.
Oh, what a it's a, you know, it's a racket already. It's already a ripoff, the whole thing. And to hear that they want to charge you double for changing your seat, it's just appalling to me, you know.
Well, I want to thank you for being on my podcast. So like I said, I know we could just go on for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. But it looks like we've gone on for an hour, so that's twice as long as you had planned. So feel free to cut whatever you want or keep whatever you want. I don't care. I've had a ball. It's been fun. Always fun talking with you, Dwayne.
Well, I want to thank everybody for watching, and you can check out Larry's videos at wesselmania.bigcartel.com. So again, thank you for being with us, and of course I'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching Pop Culture Paradox, and if you liked what you see, please subscribe to this channel and like this video and come back for more.